In 1350 BC, an empire teetering on total annihilation suddenly exploded into one of the greatest superpowers the ancient world had ever seen. Its king came within a single murder plot of marrying into the Egyptian royal family itself. This is not the story of Egypt, not Babylon, not even the mighty Assyrians. This is the forgotten rise of the Hittite Empire, the Indo-European outsiders who turned the mountains of central Anatolia into the beating heart of a realm that stretched from the Aegean to the Euphrates and made pharaohs blink. For centuries, the Hittites had been building kingdoms, but by the early 14th century BC, everything was falling apart. The old kingdom had crumbled into a century of dynastic murders, palace coups, and endless raids. The northern Kaska tribes, fierce mountain warriors who refused to kneel, burned villages and pushed right to the gates of the capital. Under King Tudhaliya III, who ruled roughly 1380 to 1350 BC, the situation became desperate. Enemies attacked from every direction. The great city of Hattusa itself was threatened, perhaps even temporarily abandoned. The royal court fled to the emergency capital of Shamuha, a place historians now call the capital in exile. It looked like the end, but inside that chaos walked one man who refused to accept defeat. His name was Suppiluliuma, a brilliant general, possibly Tudhaliya's own son or adopted heir. He had spent years commanding armies on the front lines. Around 1350 BC, he seized the throne. Some scholars quietly suggest it was through a military-backed power play. And everything changed. In a single generation, he would reconquer lost territories, rebuild the state, and launch campaigns that turned the kingdom of Hatti into a true empire. First, he stabilized the homeland. He crushed the Kaska in the north and secured the western frontiers against the fractious Arzawa Confederation. Then he turned his eyes south toward the prize everyone wanted, northern Syria, in what the Hittite annals call the One-Year War. And then the longer 6-year war, Suppiluliuma swept through the region like a storm. He captured Aleppo. He took Carchemish. He reduced the once mighty kingdom of Mitanni to a shattered vassal state known as Hannibal. And he did it with a revolutionary military edge, the Hittite three-man chariot. While Egyptian chariots carried 2 men, driver and archer, Hittite crews had 3, a driver, a warrior hurling spears or swinging axes, and a shield-bearer who protected them both. Heavier, more stable, devastating in close combat. Tens of thousands of these chariots and supporting infantry gave Suppiluliuma an army that could dictate the tempo of Bronze Age warfare. At the center of it all stood Hattusa, modern Boğazkale, about 150 to 200 kilometers east of Ankara. Around 1350 BC, Suppiluliuma poured resources into refortifying the city after earlier damage. Massive cyclopean walls more than 6 kilometers long, with double skins 8 meters thick in places, enclosed roughly 1.8 square kilometers. The inner citadel of Büyükkale housed palaces and the famous archives. Monumental gates, the Lion Gate, the Sphinx Gate, the King's Gate, were adorned with sculpted reliefs of lions, sphinxes, and armed warriors that still loom over the ruins today. Temples rose everywhere. Vast grain silos could feed thousands. Population estimates for the peak city sit between 5,000 and 10,000 souls, with perhaps 2,300 to 4,600 in the core. It was not just a capital, it was a statement. We are still here and we are stronger than ever. Yet the empire was never a monolithic, centralized state. Suppiluliuma understood something many conquerors forget. Raw force alone cannot hold a multi-ethnic realm together. He built a network of vassal kingdoms bound by iron-clad treaties, tribute, royal marriages, and strategic garrisons. He installed his own sons as kings and viceroys in conquered cities, Telepinu in Aleppo, Piassili, also known as Shari-Kushu, in Carchemish. These royal sons became the glue that held the Syrian territories. Queens, bearing the title Tawananna, wielded real independent power as high priestesses. Suppiluliuma's own wives, first Henti and later Malnigal, stood beside him as political and religious partners. The government itself was an evolving constitutional monarchy. The king was called My Son, supreme military commander, high priest, and chief judge, but he shared power with the Panku, an assembly of nobles and high officials that acted as a high court for treason or murder and advised on succession. The famous Edict of Telepinu from earlier centuries had already tried to stabilize royal bloodlines. Vassal treaties were works of legal genius, pages of detailed clauses, divine witnesses, and terrifying curses for betrayal. Economically, the empire ran on agriculture: barley, wheat, vast herds of cattle, sheep, and especially horses bred for those deadly chariots. State and temple granaries stored surplus against siege or drought. Wars brought deportees, the so-called booty people, whose labor filled labor shortages. Trade and tribute flowed in copper, silver, early iron, textiles, and grain. Hittite laws, recorded in cuneiform, were surprisingly humane for their time. Most crimes carried fines rather than mutilation or death. Society was hierarchical: free citizens, skilled artisans, slaves who still possessed certain rights. But it was pragmatic, not cruel. Religiously, the Hittites were the ultimate syncretists. They called their land the land of 1,000 gods. They absorbed Hattic, Hurrian, Mesopotamian, and local deities without hesitation. The storm god Tarhunt, later identified with Teshub, stood at the head of the pantheon, often shown standing on mountains or bulls, lightning in his fist. The king himself served as high priest. Temples were economic engines as well as holy places. Festivals like the spring Puruli brought the entire realm together in processions and ritual drama. And then, late in Šuppiluliuma's reign, came the moment that reads like a thriller. An Egyptian queen, most scholars believe it was Ankhesenamun, the young widow of the boy pharaoh Tutankhamun, sent a desperate letter. "My husband is dead," she wrote. "I have no son. Send me one of your sons to become my husband and king of Egypt." It was an astonishing request. Two superpowers on the verge of dynastic union. Šuppiluliuma, cautious but tempted, sent his son Prince Zannanza. The prince never arrived. He was murdered en route, almost certainly on Egyptian orders. The dream of peaceful merger died in the desert. War followed. Hittite forces clashed with Egyptian garrisons in Syria. And among the prisoners brought back to Hattusa were Egyptian soldiers carrying something far deadlier than weapons: a plague. The disease ravaged the empire. It killed Šuppiluliuma himself around 1322 BC. It took his eldest son and brief successor Anawanda II within a year. His younger son, Mursili II, survived to rule from 1321 to 1295 BC, but he spent years writing anguished plague prayers, begging the gods to tell him what sin had brought this punishment. Mursili also left us the deeds of Šuppiluliuma, the detailed annals that let us reconstruct his father's incredible life. Even at its zenith, the empire faced constant threats. The Kaska never fully disappeared. Manpower shortages plagued every campaign. And yet the system Šuppiluliuma built endured for another century and a half, until the Bronze Age collapse swept the region around 1200 BC. Here is the modern irony that recontextualizes everything. In 2024 and 2025, archaeologists working at the emergency capital Shamuha uncovered 56 new cuneiform tablets. Fresh painted hieroglyphs were found inside a tunnel beneath Hattusa itself. These discoveries are still being translated, but they remind us that the Hittite story is not finished. Their language, the oldest attested Indo-European tongue, is the distant ancestor of the words you are hearing right now. Their treaties are the direct intellectual forebears of every international agreement signed today. And their sudden fall carries an uncomfortable echo. No empire, no matter how cleverly administered or militarily dominant, is immune to plague, climate stress, or overextension. The Hittites rose from the ashes in 1350 BC through one man's vision, ruthless pragmatism, and a willingness to adapt. They showed the ancient world, and they still show us, that greatness is never inevitable. It is built, defended, and sometimes lost in the space of a single lifetime. So the next time you hear about great powers clashing, about diplomatic marriages that could redraw maps, or about pandemics reshaping history, remember Šuppiluliuma I and the Hittites, because the forces that lifted them, ambition, innovation, fragile alliances, and the cruel arithmetic of disease, have never really gone away. They are still shaping our world, one treaty, one chariot charge, and one unexpected plague at a time.